One thing I learned very early on, they say that just because you have the ambition and you have everything lined up to do what you want to do, but doesn't mean you have the capacity to do it.
Welcome to the Voices of Manufacturing, where people share their stories, career journeys, and perspectives on the industry. This podcast is brought to you by Dazuki, empowering the frontline manufacturing workforce. And now, here is your host, Name Tag Scott.
Welcome to another episode of the Voices of Manufacturing podcast. I'm your host, Name Tag Scott, and today's guest is going to skyrocket your mind. This is a person who's worked in critical sectors in manufacturing and engineering. Her journey began at the Canada Department of National Defence, working in aerospace engineering, acoustic avionics system, and also aircraft production. She also transferred into the private sector and now working at Enbridge as a senior advisor for capital projects. So to say that the career is mind-blowing would not be an overstatement. So please welcome to the show, Echo Jiu.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me, and thank you for the kind words.
Absolutely. I guess the first question is, where did the name Echo come from?
That is just an English name that my parents picked for me when I immigrated to Canada when I was really young, and that's pretty much it. They told me it came from Greek mythology, but I actually read the Greek mythology. It wasn't really positive character that with a happy ending, but Greek mythology screwed up in anyway, so it is what it
It's
is.
true. Right. So it doesn't have anything to do with manufacturing necessarily.
No. It's just something that like I need a name that fit in with the English speaking world, and that was the
Yeah.
one that's been chosen and given by me.
I've never met an Echo. It's a great name to have.
Thank you.
Now, prior to living in Canada, where did you grow up?
Oh, I grew up in Canada. I came here when I was really young, so
Okay.
I wasn't born here, but I
Uh-huh.
came here really young. So my memory, my
Right.
education, everything is all here Canadian.
Yeah. And I've been to Ontario a couple of times, in Hamilton in particular, which is a huge manufacturing town.
Yeah. So I'm actually more closer to Hamilton in my current
Really?
living condition arrangement compared to what I actually grew up with. Yeah.
What do they manufacture in Hamilton? I honestly can't remember.
I actually don't know either, to be honest with you, because like growing up in the GTA area, most particularly, my world was in city of Toronto and somewhere also like a little bit northern, the one of the suburb area, Markham. So between
Uh-huh.
Markham, Scarborough, and North York, there's not a lot of manufacturing presence around the area I grew up with.
Right.
But plus Toronto is a very diverse city and it's an economic hub and kind of a miniature economic hub.
Right.
So I actually don't know, unfortunately.
Yeah, I know. I remember when I was in Hamilton, I was out one day and there's tons of manufacturing, tons of factories, and it's a big part of what they do. I just can't remember what it was. So when you were growing up in Canada, did you have dreams of working in a manufacturing career?
Not particularly. It was one of
Yeah.
those things that kind of stumbled upon to as what I discovered what I want to do in life. So growing up, as I mentioned, in Toronto, very diverse, like economic hub. I heard a lot of people talking about, oh, you want to go onto the Bay Street, you want to work on
Oh,
downtown, you want to work at the Ivory Tower,
yeah.
but not many people talk about manufacturing sector per se. So manufacturing is kind of like became a
Yeah.
letter or a vocabulary or kind of an idea in a textbook when people were talking about. But like
Right.
through the career counseling, through like talking to different adults, and then growing up in the like kind of a trying to navigate adulthood, for lack of a better term, that the main focus, a lot of inspiration stuff they throw out is around like the Bay Street, the downtown, the Ivory Tower. But eventually, as we start to zoning in into what are you actually passionate about, what you're interested in, these are the manufacturing terminology start to bringing up, like auto engineering or like aircraft manufacturing or like commodity carrying or chemical engineering, industrial engineering. Those are the conversations start running up. So yeah, a little bit of unique experiences from my personal perspective. Like
Yeah.
didn't really dreamed of like
Right.
becoming like engineering manager for a manufacturing facility per se. It's just some of the things that I stumbled upon.
Yeah. Well, what was the first job you had?
So my first job I had is actually with the Department of National Defense here in
Right.
Canada. So
Right.
I joined the Air Force after
Right.
the after graduating the university, and what I got slotted to in my what we call it the first posting is working for the Department of National Defense on the more of the public service side, where we're looking at the our assets, our physical asset in the Air
Yeah.
Force, our planes. So we divide each plane. It's deep into subsystem because
Okay.
plane is very complex and you need dedicated support to manage, maintain, and oversee the system of the whole life cycle. You know, like you got someone who focus on airframe. You got someone who a whole team actually focus on
Yeah.
engine because that's very
Right.
very important. And then for me, like what you just introduced is like avionics system. So
Right.
that what I got assigned to. So I become like what they call it the system engineer,
Right.
to be responsible for a subset of the acoustic related system on the aircraft. So that was my first job. Honestly, that was also the most accelerated growth I had in my
Really?
career. A lot of stuff I learned at that job, and it's still carrying with me today.
Well, give me a couple of snapshots. What are some specific things that you still use today?
So snapshot like for example, you have to looking at one thing I learned very early on. They say that just because you have the ambition and you have everything lined up to do what you want to do, but doesn't mean you have capacity to do it. So we call it the
Okay.
capacity to spend. So if you have let's say aircraft you need to deploy in a certain capability, you have to bring on a new modification or system upgrade. Just because you dump money onto it doesn't mean you're going to solve the problem because it takes time. You have to set up
Right.
a new assembly line. You have to looking at how the integration process is going to look. You only have a limited amount of technician. Just because you're
Right.
hiring them from the street doesn't mean that they know exactly which screw to turn, which wrench to turn, and it's a whole chain, like ecosystem. Like
Yeah.
it's a whole cycle to get this job done. So when you make a bold statement such as like, yeah, sure, give me this funding, I'll get it done. You really want to be careful of that because it doesn't mean you can deliver.
Right.
Yeah,
Just because you have ambition doesn't mean capacity. That's great.
yeah. And then and the of course you have to learn how to navigate with a different constraint. But the biggest thing that I learned is like time is a critical factor to get
Right.
things done. And just because you have the ambition and you don't have resistance, but you still need time on your side.
Yeah. Well, as this being your first job out of university, talk about some of the people you encountered. What was that like from a team perspective?
So on my first job, I was really fortunate when I say I had an accelerated growth because I was surrounded with a lot of diverse people. So there's one or two colleagues that I work with. We became good friends because we're around the
Yeah.
same age. We're both
Yeah.
young, and then we all came out of university. But I was also surrounded with a pool of people with their industry veteran. Like some of
Yep.
them, they know the entire airframe at like back of their hand. I ask
Yeah.
them any question, they can tell me like from the inception that before I was even born, what is that
Huh.
first blueprint looks like to the
Cool.
point that now here's what does it look on the aircraft, what does it mean, what's the capability, what the evolution. So I was surrounded with a lot of people with a very deep knowledge where they don't hesitate to actually share that. So they always tell me like, Echo, you need to be a sponge. I'm going to give you as much as information, as much as guidance, as much as knowledge I can possibly give you, but you need to absorb it and then apply it yourself. So I was very fortunate in that direction. And also being exposed to a lot of people with good like human leadership perspective. So
Yeah.
we always talking about like when you go out, what do you have to appreciate, what you don't have to appreciate, how is the human relation works, particularly between pilot and aircraft technician. How is those
Right.
relationship is key to making sure your plane take off and land safely, etc., etc., etc. So that's pretty cool.
Well, that's interesting. So the pilot and the technician. So talk about that relationship. Like what has to be going on between those two critical people?
That's a yeah, that's actually a really good question. So it's an interesting dynamic. I
Yeah.
personally describe it as like a love and hate relationship because typically the technician will say, like, this pilot breaks my plane and then now the plane is grounded. The pilot will in turn and say that this technician did not do his job properly. Now my plane is grounded. So in the reality is that we were talking about that if the technician and the pilot have a personal relationship and actually have a respect to able to see the perspective from other people's shoe, like see each other's shoe, like what does it mean to be a pilot? So you will take it into consideration in your day. You will pay the extra attention. You will be careful, and then you pay the extra thought. You have the interaction saying that, hey, if I'm gonna do this modification, can you sit in the cockpit, do a maneuver, so I can have that trigger reaction to see how does it goes? And then from the pilot perspective, they are actually spend the time because technician doesn't go onto the flight every single flight except for maintenance checkout flight. And then when they come back, if they rely on the pilot to be patient with them, explain to them what are the situation they encounter in flight, explain, walk them through what they see, trying to reproduce it on the ground level. That's
Right.
very, very hard because it's
Yeah.
a different environment. Just because you feel it in the mid-air doesn't mean the problem is 100% reproducible. But
Mm.
just because it's not reproducible doesn't mean that we want it to happen in the mid-air
That's
again.
right.
Because safety is priority, right? We can afford having like non-safe aircraft flying in the air. So that relationship is very critical. If you have a technician and have a confidence with the pilot, it will like how the aircraft perform is very evident. And
Right.
then it's going to be snag after snag, ground after ground, and then you solve one problem, you doesn't address the root cause. It's a sequence that is a problematic plane. But if you have a good relationship between your ground crew, between your technician, between your pilot, that is treasure bird. That's gonna perform very well. It's gonna translate in the flying hour, in the mission, and all that kind of stuff. It's very critical.
I think every organization has that version of like there's these two different departments and they have a love-hate relationship with each other. So maybe it's HR and IT, or maybe it's sales and marketing. That's my world. We're always butting heads, back and forth. And it's, yeah, the relationship is critical, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And you've worked a bunch of different positions in that 10-year span with the Department of Defense. So talk about like the trajectory, no pun intended, of some of the other jobs you also had.
So typically, how the career progression of an aerospace engineer within the Department of National Defense is goes that you start from doing like kind of on the job training. You do rotations. You see
Mhm.
different department what they do. Then you get into one position. So we call it the weapon management. Weapon system management department. So that's where I was in the first. That's the first job that I have. But then that's a centralized, we call it the weapons support function. And we do most of engineering work, but we are not very close to the aircraft. Like
Ah,
the fleet that I support is nowhere near Ottawa, where my office is.
mhm.
So what they do is that after you do that centralized support position, they want you to gain appreciation on what does it feel like at the front line. To go to
Mm.
the front line to be exposed to what does it look like when you sign off on something, a paper in Ottawa. How does it translate into the people in the production line?
Ah,
So they would typically start rotating people to what they call it the maintenance position. So you become a maintenance manager for a production line, for a servicing line. So just picture like an airline. So aircraft in, you inspect, you fix, aircraft out, and the aircraft in, you inspect, you fix, aircraft out. Or you go
yeah.
to a second production line, which is also like the airline. Aircraft come in, you do deep maintenance, and then you punch it out. And the aircraft come in, you restore certain flying hour by getting rid of the fatigue parts and then getting rid
Mhm.
of all the old parts and or fix major snag that's really broke. It required dedicated effort. So you fix that, you
Mhm.
punch it out, or do modification. That's another type of a career trajectory. Or
Cool.
you will go into something called capital procurement. So you are working on the next level, next big thing, such as like F-35 procurement or fixed wing SAR procurement or stuff like that. So you do that
Cool.
rotation, you gain experience, you grow as a person, as a professional, and at that kind of career stage point, you will be eligible and start making a decision whether you want to get promoted or not. And once you get promoted, you repeat the same cycle but at a higher level,
I
and
see.
just keep going until you retire.
And in the time that you were doing all these different roles, did you have mentors that were guiding you along the way?
Yes. So well, in the Department of National Defense, that's good thing about the working environment is a mentorship. It's not like just a thing they talk about.
Mm,
Like it. First of all, like disclaimer, it's nothing like fancy and glory like how Hollywood portrayed it. Like
right.
nobody's gonna like bail you out of jail and then give you a sofa to sleep like in those Hollywood movies. But on the other hand, because the mentorship is like the bread and butter of the corporate culture, so everywhere you go, like if you don't show up, like sorry for the language, I'm not sure if you're gonna beat me out. Like if you don't show up like an asshole with the ego all over your head, saying that I know everything, everybody listen to me, then everyone surround you is more than happy to share what
Yeah.
you learn, like what you should know in order to be successful in your position. And they're more, like if you show up saying that, hey, can I shadow you for a day, or can I see what you're doing? What does it look like to be in your shoe? Like let me live a day in your life. They're more than happy to do so, and they
Yeah.
welcome it. And all the time, like they also have the more senior people will actually pull you aside, saying that okay, when you say this, be careful of this. When
Right.
you do this, be careful of that because the perception and the implication. So they do that instantaneous feedback through the day-to-day
Yeah.
transaction. But it's nothing fancy like Hollywood, where like
Right.
you suffer a life crisis and then they gonna come and rescue you like a superhero. It's nothing
Right.
fancy like that.
It's not Top Gun Maverick.
No, 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 definitely not.
Do you remember any specific mentors you had?
Yes, some of them I still talk to
Wow.
them today. So
Cool.
the technical authority from my first job, because every aircraft we have something called a technical authority. They're the
Mhm.
almost like a principal engineer per se.
Okay.
I'm still in contact with him, and then my very first boss, he retired.
Mhm.
I still email to him from time to time. Some of the old trainer, he retired as well, and we still have like monthly chat to checking how are we doing, how's retirement
Cool.
life, and stuff like that. So yeah, you definitely build those long lasting relationship in those in job like that.
Is it exciting to talk to them in their retirement and share your successes with them?
A little bit, but it's more exciting to me just looking at what they're gonna do when they're retired. Because I remember this one director I
Right.
had. He came out of retirement 3 times. So he retired, he come back, he retired, he come back, and every time he come back, he told me that I got kicked out by my wife again because I can't sit home and retire. I need to do something.
That's right. If they're that level of leadership, they have to be engaged mentally in something, right?
Yeah,
That's incredible that you're able to stay in touch with them and continue to learn and share with them.
yeah, definitely.
Have you been able to pay it forward and mentor some of the younger professionals that have come to work with you?
Yes. So some of them I was able to share my experiences, offer my advice.
Mhm.
The other parts I do also recognize when I departed my way with the Department of National Defense, I was still quite young professional myself.
Ah,
So going out of it, I'm still in a position to seek more knowledge and seek more
right.
guidance. But for people who coming in, they ask me for some advice. We definitely had that kind of network conversation. I don't shy
Cool.
away to offer what my insight is, what my personal
Yeah.
recommendation it is. So yeah, definitely looking for opportunity to pay forward.
Well, you transitioned out of working for the government and then into the private sector. What was that like?
Um, Part of it it's exciting, and
Hmm.
then part of it it's also a cultural shock.
Right.
So I do admit like working in the government, everyone is like it's a gigantic machine. Everyone just
Right.
a very tiny piece of puzzle and like really tiny screw. So you've constantly, like, if you very ambitious, you want to get something done, you need to have a lot of patience, like a lot of patience,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of process and red tape. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Sometimes it's the
Yeah.
decision is
Yeah.
made not because it's not the right decision, it's because it's a political influence decision.
Mm.
And also in the world of national defense, sometimes it's not about Canadian interests, it's about NATO interests, about the Five Eyes interests,
Ah.
about the Allies'
Ah.
interests. So that's like way above my pay grade, right?
Yeah.
Yes. So those like going to private sector depends on the size of organization. You're still gonna feel them, but they're not as prevalent as like in your face compared to if you're
Right.
working in the public sector. So in
Well,
public
how?
sector,
Yeah.
every decision you make, every conversation you have, you always ask yourself, will this pass the global mail test? So if the conversation leads to public, how will the public react? So kind of encourage to be a very risk avert. You want to play the safe. It's been done before. It's proven safe. You keep repeat. Private sector, not necessarily. It's
Right.
about result driven. So that is really exciting, scary, and cultural shock at the same time, right? And particularly in the private sector, when we talk about result, it's not about like flying hours, mission accomplishment. It's the revenue. It's how much you earn
Yeah.
in the end.
Yeah.
In the government, though, that's not necessarily too much is your primary target. Your primary target is deliver the mandate that government promises to the taxpayer. So even if it means that you have to run a deficit, as long as the government commit to it and the public agree to it, you just keep running it. You do what you need to do
Right.
to serve the mandate. Private sector, you try to run a deficit, Wall Street gonna eat you alive.
You'll never last. When you were at Blanchford, do you remember any specific projects where you were surprised, like, oh, really? I can do that? Or, what was an example of a culture shock?
So for the cultural shock, yeah, like when I joined the job and they're looking at certain production equipment overhaul, and I after I sent a dotted line, and I remember my first signature, and when the production said, we're looking at get this equipment offline, so you and can you do this upgrade at the same time? And I said, oh yeah, sure, let me sign this and. I have no objection to it. So what's next? And I got an answer saying that, no, that's it. You sign off yet? We're going to do it. I'm like, oh, okay. So I don't need another 20 signatures and then for it. No, no, that's it. Production manager is on board. I'm on board. We just go ahead and do it.
Glory, hallelujah.
Yeah. So that was a really big cultural shock. So yeah, I don't miss those red tape, but I
Right.
understand why they're there, and I
Right.
understand the importance of it. But it's definitely a different mentality. So it's about compatibility. See which one fits you better.
Cool. Cool. All right. We're going to talk more about that in a minute. But for now, we're at the halftime point. So we are going to do my favorite segment, which is travel back in time and find out what happened on this day in manufacturing history. Are you ready to play, Echo?
Yeah, sure.
All right. Let's do it.
On this day, on this day.
So we're going to crank up the gears and forge some knowledge. Here's how we play. I'm going to share 3 pivotal moments in manufacturing history. You're going to have 30 seconds to answer multiple choice questions. And if you get all 3 of them right, you are going to win 1 million Dazuki dollars.
Sure.
That's our fake cryptocurrency. It has no material value. Sorry.
I figured.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to paste this in the chat for your reference. Okay, here we go. On this day in manufacturing history in 1839, the steam shovel was patented by William Otis. Now, steam shovels played a big role in public works manufacturing, but they also show up in popular culture, in cartoons and books. So, what was the name of the first children's book about the steam shovel? Was it A, Sally Sullivan's Excavation Adventure in 1928? Was it B, I Eat Dirt for Breakfast from 1934? Or was it C, Mike Mulligan and his steam shovel, 1939?
See, Mike Mulligan, his steam shovel.
You got it. I wish it was I eat dirt for breakfast, but you are correct. Mike Mulligan and the steam shovel. When I was researching, I found out that Thomas the Train has a friend named Marion who is in fact a steam shovel.
Oh, nice.
I know. I don't have children yet, but when we do, I'm sure I'll learn more about Thomas the Train. Okay, you're doing great. 1 for 1. Let's go on to question number 2. On this day in manufacturing history in 1843, the rotary printing press was invented by Richard March Hoe. This revolutionized manufacturing of books and newspapers. It would produce 18,000 sheets per hour. Question is, what was the famous nickname of the rotary printing press? Was it A, the Thunderbolt Roller, B, the Iron Horse, or C, the Lightning Press?
The lightning press. See?
You're on fire. 2 for 2. That is the correct answer, the Lightning Press. And I also found out in New York, in the Bronx, Printers Park is located at the place of residence of the founder, where you can see a dedication to the rotary printing press.
Oh, okay.
I
Interesting.
know. I'm gonna have to go take a tour. That sounds fun. Okay, this is incredible. You're the first person to potentially get 3 in a row on this day. So here is your last question. No pressure. On this day, back in 1901, J.P. Morgan formed U.S. Steel, which was a huge moment in manufacturing history because it was the merger of the 3 largest companies in the country. So 90 years later, steel played a pivotal role in an iconic scene from a 1991 film. In this movie, the dramatic death sequence of a key character involves molten steel. What film was this? A, RoboCop, B, Short Circuit, or C, Terminator 2?
Terminator 2 Judgment Day.
You got it. That's right. The T-1000 got buried in the molten lava, and then it was just the best scene. It was amazing.
I
Wow,
remember this because Terminator,
Yeah.
like, it's
Oh,
my
yeah.
husband watch it over and over again because he's such a huge fan of Arnold.
It's the best. I just rewatched T2 recently, and it holds up, man. It's awesome. Well, excellent job. You have gone 3 for 3. You win $1 million Dazuki dollars. Congratulations.
We're making history over and over again on this day.
Okay, so we're going to move into part 2 of our show today. And so as we talked about before, you transition from some of the frontline roles, and now you work as an advisor. So you've sort of left properly manufacturing. So talk about that pivot.
So that pivot, honestly, it to me is a natural jump into the area that I like to focus on. I find it exciting.
Cool.
And it's also depends on you gotta be the right place with the right opportunity, the right time. Like just because you want to do it doesn't mean
Right.
you can. You have to have an opportunity to have someone extend a hand to you. So
Okay.
the part that I'm mostly curious and I'm passionate about, and I draw into it, is called the life cycle management of physical asset. So
Okay.
something like ISO 55000. What
Right.
they're doing is they're looking at from a physical asset perspective. When you make a decision, you trying to look at it from a bird's eye view. So the whole thing is about you want your operation, you want your asset do the work to meet your need, not the other way around. So what I
Right.
meant by that, just because you have like a pump that needs to be repaired, doesn't mean it needs to be repaired because it
Right.
technically required. Does it make business sense to repair it? Or is it the right opportunity to say that, you know what, I'm going to scrap this entire assembly line and then
Right.
do something different because my business strategy is that I want to transition from this product line to a different product line. So that is the area of specialization that I
Yeah.
like to spend some time in my career on because I'm still in I have 30 years left until I can eligible for retire. Long way.
Right.
So I like to spend a portion of my career looking at that level of work. So in manufacturing, that's very huge because you want to making sure your assembly line, your physical assets do the work for you, and you can generate profit from it. But at the same time, it is also the most challenging thing to do, especially if you have something called that require very heavy initial capital investment, and the payout period will be a mix of tangible and intangible benefit.
Right.
But so the stakeholder navigation, it's it's a huge take. So that's how you do it in the kind of manufacturing setting. But it's not only applicable to the setting. Like in aircraft, where I started my career, we start looking at it when at the very conception stage of procuring aircraft. I buy this aircraft, I need to fly it for 40 years, and it's about like a million flight cycle. What does it take? You have a vision.
Right.
You start figuring it out. I need this many pilot. I need this many technician. I need this many parts. I need this engineering capacity. So if I'm going to operate it in this area, I need to modify the engine in this way. If I need to land in a harsher condition, my landing gear needs to look at this. I need this kit. I need that modification ready to go. So you start looking at it like life cycle perspective.
Right.
It is a monster. Like you can't do it by 8%. You need a team to support that. The other area that is very popular to actually have appetite for that approach will be in the utility sector. So, which is where currently I am. And at a time, what I'm seeking to grow my career is looking at soft skill. So just because I'm right doesn't mean people are gonna listen to me. Just because sometimes it's not about what I say, it's about how I say it. And so I'm looking at like a growth opportunity and then a learning platform that I can be mentored and I can give instant feedback and I have opportunity to explore where I will get challenged looking at how to navigate between different stakeholders and kind of sell the vision I want to sell. And at a time through network and then through engagement, Enbridge like extend opportunity to me saying that hey,
Yeah.
we need someone to come and join us in this journey. We have a platform that think that what you're looking for, and we need your skill set. So, are you interested? And
Yeah.
through some engagement and through the conversation, it sounds like a good opportunity. So I just say yes, and then made a jump. I left
Yeah.
manufacturing and I joined utility.
What do you miss about the manufacturing world?
The honestly, it's the Six Sigma portion of the manufacturing world. I
Yeah.
mix the most like the fact you're counting the precision down to the second.
Yeah.
How my product bagging performance, if I can shrink it from 10 second a bag down to 7 second a bag, if that is let's say a 20 million product line, what does it translate into
Right.
from a revenue perspective, efficiency perspective? Of course, the sales team have to be able to sell that many products, but that's kind of like the relation you're aiming to kind of like trim it down to that level of precision. It's kind
Yeah.
of like give myself an engineering high, right? At the,
Yeah.
at the root of it, I'm still an engineer. I have an engineering mindset.
Right. Now that you're working in utilities, do you see the world of utilities different? If a garbage truck drives by, do you think differently about it now that you work in that world?
Not necessarily, to be honest with you. When garbage truck came, I just think about like, please don't slap my garbage can.
Well, talk about some of the portfolio companies or projects that you might work on within utilities.
So I work in Enbridge. So Enbridge is kind of I do acknowledge we're a controversial company because in Calgary we're heavy hitter in oil and gas. We do
I see.
extraction, and that's what it's being known from. And right now, oil and gas, due to our climate change, and then due to our
Sure.
the footprint, we're the devil to chase after.
Of course.
But that's in Calgary. But in Texas, we're also the renewable energy provider. Our vision
Oh,
is we want to be the number one energy provider for all consumers. And in France, we set up like offshore windmill and that kind of stuff. So on one
cool.
end, we're also looking at being a contributor for the energy transition. Because in our mind, the corporate culture is that we are energy provider
That's
and
right.
we will provide energy. So we're not necessarily fixed on how the energy is being
Right.
translated. And we want to go green. We want to reduce our carbon footprint. We want to contribute it. We believe we're part of the solution, not necessarily the devil.
Right.
In Ontario, where I am, we're a utility because a majority of the houses in Ontario, in the winter, the heating source is natural gas. And
Ah.
Enbridge provides and delivers natural gas to our end consumer. And we leave
Mhm.
pipe in the ground. So in a way, we're kind of a mix between we deliver natural gas and then we also are infrastructure company because we have to lay the pipe, the network to transport all those natural gas to the end consumers. So that's kind of
Yeah.
where I navigate into the world that I live in right now.
Have you got a chance to go to Texas to see their facilities?
No, no, not yet. Hopefully in the future. And also, I like to see the front one as well. I see them in like internal emails, and I saw the picture. I saw like the interview our CEO gave. Like it looks really amazing. But hopefully down the future, I'll have the opportunity.
That's exciting to be. I mean, that's the future, right? I mean, looking at green energy and making sure that we're protecting the space. That's got to be inspiring to be part of that.
Yeah, and also like in Ontario, we are also the service provider to looking at how to work with a customer to reduce their gas consumption, and also so looking at like what are the energy audit and what are the different options that the our residents can actually make their house greener, and we work with the
Right.
customer. So in a way, they will consume lesser natural gas, and their house will be
Yeah.
greener, and we are the service provider for the Ontario government and the federal
Yeah.
government to deliver that to Ontario residents. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's really like interesting time, and also I understand it's a controversial time that we live in.
Does that inspire you to continue researching and learning about climate change so you have that context for when it comes up?
Yeah, it definitely spiked the more like my attention to looking at how what is the energy sector look like and how is the future of the energy transition gonna look. And because it's really impacting the domain that I kind of live in right now. And then there's the other part also kind of shape my perspective as well, right? So from energy transition, we always talk about like are we on the right side of history or the wrong side of history? I don't really think it like that. My personal perspective is that if I want to be a better future of the of the for the earth for the next generation, so I can either do it by raising awareness and a petition, and then keep advocating for the right policy, or I can use my engineering skill set to work for the company like Enbridge, saying that okay, let's looking at how is that transition look like from infrastructure perspective, how's the physical asset perspective. Just because you have an idea doesn't mean it's going to become a reality. Somebody got to do it. So I think either way, like you're on the right side of the history and then kind of working towards that future.
I'm writing down all these notes because you have these insights that are just terrific. So stand by. All right, got it. Can't miss any of these good stuff. And as you mentioned, you said 30 years before retirement kicks in. Yeah, what's exciting about like the next chapter? I mean, I'm sure you're thrilled with where you are now. Like, what other things would you like to do?
To be honest, I'm really curious about how the green energy sector is gonna look like. So
Yeah.
I'm excited how is that gonna what the future is gonna look. And particularly in the technology front, is that the green energy sector, it is still a growing sector. A lot of technology we put it on the market there. The room for maturity and the
Mm,
room for advancement and how the next generation look like nobody knows at the moment because they don't exist yet. So
right.
I'm excited for what that future is going to look like and how what the future like the zero carbon footprint world we looking how we going to do it. And also like it kind of also brings a lot of interesting perspective, kind of challenge my perception reality a bit. One of the things we talk about like in Canada as well, just like United States, cost of living. Just
Right.
because you want to do a transition doesn't mean your residents can afford it. If I have to pay $700 a month in my electricity bill, and that's the price I have to pay for the full transition, just an example. So what's going to happen to your citizens? Doesn't
Right.
mean we can afford it, and doesn't mean
Mm,
it's realistic. So that's one thing. If people have to struggle between putting food on their table versus paying an electricity bill, your
right.
appetite for your end consumer is really not going to be there. So these are the new perspective and lenses that I gain while living in this world. How does it transition? But at the main end, when we looking at the footprint of the natural gas and then what's happening in Calgary, and then looking at the extreme weather. Like this winter, living in Toronto, I didn't have to
Yeah.
shovel for the first time in my life. Last
Yeah.
year, Rideau Canal in Ottawa didn't get open. Like those are the reality that
Yeah.
I'm experiencing living through from day to day. So, do I want to increase carbon footprint? Of course not. Like I do not want to see the end of the earth. So what does it look like? How do we navigate this, and how do we come on top, and then making sure we're doing the right thing and the responsible thing? That's what I'm excited about for to see in the next 30 years of my career.
Beautiful. Okay, well, we're going to wrap up with our final lightning round. A couple of questions. Number one, if you could take a tour of any current manufacturing facility, what would it be?
Toyota.
Yes, the OGs, absolutely. Okay, now if you could go back in time and see any product in history being manufactured, what would it be?
Very first Ford car.
Yeah. Okay, next one is, what is your perfect music if you were working on the front line?
Probably Beethoven.
Yeah, great answer. Okay, if you were the plant manager with an unlimited budget, how would you redesign the break room?
That's an interesting one. I actually don't know. I'll be honest, because people have different view on how they will leverage the break room to de-stress. So I guess the starting point would be a good refreshment to our workers, and a good seating chair, and then good coffee. People need their coffee.
Yes,
No,
the 100.
no bad coffees, and that would be a good starting point.
So are we talking like Tim Hortons coffee, or do we need to elevate above that?
Oh, we need to elevate a little bit more than Tim Horton coffee.
Okay, hey, fair enough. And then the last question is, what would be your advice for somebody on day one going into the manufacturing industry?
Have an open mind, and be prepared to be challenged with your perception. Be ready to face resistance, because in manufacturing, you're going to encounter old dinosaur. They will say no just for the sake of saying no. You can't reason with them. You can't logic with them. They just want to say no. But then you will also, on the other spectrum, you will also face a lot of people with great new ideas. Some of them might not be very obvious. You will be like, what the hell you're talking about? But be open minded to it. Come back to it. There will be new revelation to recircle back that conversation. So you're gonna have the extreme of two ends. So be prepared, and be mentally prepared as well.
The favorite thing that I learned today, I'm going to echo this back to you. Just because you have ambition doesn't mean you have capacity.
Oh, thank you.
Well, thank you so much for being our guest today, and we appreciate you being here. And on behalf of Dazuki and everyone here, this is Name Tag Scott reminding you that if you don't write it down, it never happened. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of the Voices of Manufacturing podcast. This show is brought to you by Dazuki, empowering the frontline manufacturing workforce. Check out Dazuki on LinkedIn to listen to past episodes and learn how your team can increase productivity and strengthen employee engagement.